Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Appreciate you joining me here for another week, and I am back. We are back on the podcast train after what's been pretty much 2 months off, 2 months just to reassess, 2 months to get some planning done. As I would have mentioned before I went on the break, the plan was always to start to transition this podcast into an interview style where I'm going to have some guests on. I'm going to be able to talk to them about podcasts that pertain to fatherhood, to health, to well-being, to mindset, and just life in general. And I'm excited to let you know that I have finally done everything that I needed to in order to get that thing rolling. And starting from next week, you will start to see some of those interviews start to roll out. Now, I've already done quite a number of them. So we'll start to queue them up and they'll start to release over the next couple of weeks. And I've had some messages over the time that we've had a break asking when the podcast is coming back, how it's coming back, whether I'm doing this, doing that. And I appreciate those. I appreciate the messages of support. And it lets me know that kind of what I'm doing here is having some impact on you and those important to you. And so thank you for your support as always. The last 8 weeks, I've definitely had to kind of take a step back and reassess. As you probably know from some of the episodes that I've been doing, I got a pretty full plate at the moment. I got a little bit going on. I've decided to go back to study as well. And I also needed the last 8 weeks, not just to get ready for these interviews that I've been doing, but just to reassess what I really wanted out of the podcast, because it does take a little bit of a time commitment, and especially transitioning into doing the interview style podcasts, it's going to take more of a time commitment. The podcasts are going to be longer. I'm aiming for each podcast to be around that 45 minutes to an hour. I did toy with the idea of trying to make them like multiple hours, but just due to my time commitment and the time commitment of the people that I am interviewing as well, to being respectful of their time and the fact that they're kind of giving it away to be on here to share their knowledge or their experiences with you guys, I wanted to just kind of keep it under that hour mark, and hopefully it means that the conversation is free flowing. What I've found from the ones that I've done, it's a whole new skill set that I'm yet to develop. I've spent many years obviously coaching, working on communication skills, trying to always get better at that. But interviewing and trying to extend a conversation and get good amounts of information out of people is a skill set in itself. And it's even a different skill set to a sales format. I've done a lot of obviously sales calls, whether it be in my previous life, as a young 20-year-old man working as a rep doing like photocopier sales and things like that, through to owning the gym. There was obviously a very high volume of sales that went into doing that. And, it's a different skill set when you're interviewing somebody for a podcast, trying to keep the conversation flowing, trying to get a good level of information out of them that I think is going to be interesting, not only for myself, but for the people listening. So it's been fun. So far, it's been great. I've been happy that I've been able to do the episodes that I've done. I've still got quite a few interviews booked in. So, yeah, that's going to be the direction of the podcast for the near future. Will that change? Who knows? One thing that I've kind of came to the conclusion about over the last 8 weeks is, these things are always going to be fluid, and it's something that I've spoken about quite a lot. It's been the 8 weeks that have just passed have been a season of mine that haven't involved doing a podcast, which the last 3 years has been pretty consistently every week doing a solo podcast. And I'm hoping that moving into this new phase, it's going to still be plenty of value for those of you that have listened, and hopefully attract some new listeners as well. I will continue to do the solo podcast. I'm still working out whether it's going to be every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, but my idea right now is I'll probably do 2 interviews and then 1 solo podcast, still picking a topic that comes up in either my life, the lives of the clients that I coach, that I teach, and just riffing on that for, that 15-20 minutes, doing that shorter episode. But that's what you can expect over the next little while from the podcast. I've got some interviews coming down the pipe, and then I'll continue to do the solo podcast. They just won't be every single week. They will be every couple of weeks. I'm still going to keep with the one a week release. I simply can't prioritize the time to do any more right now. While the podcast is is fun and I get a lot of value from it, it's a labor of love. There are other things that need to take priority for me right now, especially those around providing for my family, which is something that I'm sure everybody listening can relate to. As much as I would love to be doing this full time, it doesn't make any money really. So the money making activities have to take priority, which is the coaching. Quick plug on that. 5 minutes into this podcast, if you would like to do some coaching with me around your health and well-being, then there is a link in the show notes, and it is in every single show note, where you can jump on. You can book a time for a free 30-minute consultation with myself, where we're going to run through the things that you're struggling with, the things that you want to improve, and start to help you formulate a plan moving forward. Now, that plan may be with a program that I can provide to you. It may not be as well too. The whole point of me putting out those 30-minute coaching calls is to try and, at least by the time we finish it, get to a point where you have some actionable steps and some direction to actually start moving things forward in your life in a more positive way, or how you see as a more positive way. That is going to transition over the next few months into not only offering health and well-being, but one of the things I have been studying to become a counselor in. So I'm undertaking a diploma of counselling at the moment, so eventually that will be one of the services that I will be offering. And one of the reasons why I decided to do counselling is, in all my years as a personal trainer, as a coach, helping people with their physical health, there's quite a large amount of inadvertent counselling that goes on. You are People tell you a lot of things that they generally wouldn't tell anybody. And I wanted to arm myself with the appropriate skills and qualification to be able to actually do that. Now, I see that there's a big intersection between the two, between the counseling and the health and fitness coaching, but some people will need more of one, some people will need more of the other. And from the point of view of my programs, the coaching that I'm going to be able to deliver to people, it's hopefully going to be a bit more holistic, a bit more well-rounded. And I'm going to be able to, if say, for example, I'm with somebody and they require just a counseling session, then I will have the tools, I will have the qualifications, and I'll be able to provide that. So that's something I'm very, very excited about. I'm very excited to be able to provide that and broaden what the Unstoppable Dad Project is going to be able to do from a professional standpoint with people. But the podcast will continue. It will continue to be free. One of the reasons I really wanted to start to do interviews is so I can learn more. I can expose myself to more people. I can have chats with people that are interesting, potentially people that I wouldn't come across in my day-to-day life or in my circles, to expand my way of thinking and just get some hopefully valuable information. And then on top of that, as a selfish ulterior motive, it's so I can get better at asking questions. As I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, uh, it's a different skill set interviewing people. I've worked that out than it is even with everything else I've done from a communication standpoint. So it's a skill set that I think is going to play really well with the counseling side of things that I'm doing. So even if no one listens to these podcasts, which I'm sure they will, we've had a great listenership, loyal listenership that have stuck with me rambling for 15 minutes every week for 3 years. So I'm sure this is going to just enhance the quality of what you'll be able to hear. One of the things I'll just cover off quickly, because I always like to leave each of these solo podcasts with something that I think is a little bit of usable information. I've heard a term which is compassionate curiosity. And over the course of the last 8 weeks, I've been using that quite a bit, right? Like, because I had to take this step back. I had the idea that I wanted to transition this podcast into an interview style where I'm bringing people on, but I also knew that that was going to increase the time commitment that was involved in it. So I really had to sit back and look at what resistance I was facing and what was stopping me. Because realistically, even though it has taken me 8 weeks to get to the point where I'm releasing these episodes, I probably could have done it in one or two. Like I could have done it quicker, but there was a lot of resistance there around. Do I really want to do this? Do I really want to keep doing the podcast? Um, are people seeing some value from it? Am I getting anything out of it? Like, what are the things? What are the points as to why I want to do it, but more importantly, why don't I want to do this? Why are these levels of resistance coming up? And there was a few things there. There was fear of failure, like I was worried about what if it doesn't succeed. And that was probably minimal because I've overcome that by just doing it in the first place. I've spoken a few times about how this podcast probably should have happened 2 years before it actually did, and there was a lot of self-doubt that I had to go through to get to the point to do it, and also just getting out of my way, like getting out of my own shit, getting out of my own head and starting to move that, like actually taking some action to do it. But fear of failure was there, and also self-doubt, like, are you good enough to do this? Are you good enough to sit with people and go through and do that? And rather than being hard on myself, because I think default mode for a lot of men, especially myself, is to be hard on myself. It's like, no, like, you can do this. You're just being an idiot. Like, knuckle down. Let's get it done. Go hard. Like, let's knock this out. And instead of doing that, what I wanted to do is like really dig deep and ask myself some questions. And that compassionate curiosity saying that piece was something that I kept referring back to, asking myself, why do I feel this way? Why do I not want to do this? Rather than a lot of the things when we undertake a new task is like, why do we want to do this? Sometimes we do need to ask ourselves, why do we not want to do this? Why is there resistance? Why am I trying to almost self-sabotage myself to the point where I'm stopping myself from taking any action on this? And really digging deep on that and coming up with the reasons why I didn't want to do that, and then having them written down so that I could either dismiss them or potentially validate them. And if I could validate them, then working out ways that if all the pros and cons are lined up and I've got more pros here, like I'm going to see more benefit and this is going to be a good thing for me to be able to move everything forward. And then there's those cons, but some of them are very valid. Working out within the plan of what I want to do moving forward, how to potentially negate those cons, and then just kind of understanding a plan and understanding the whole situation, so that as I go into this and as I start doing it, and then when I start struggling with things like, oh, like I'm struggling with, asking a question with this particular person, like trying to really understand why and get to the bottom of it. And it's questioning yourself why in an objective way can be such a powerful tool to get anything that you're trying to undertake moving forward, but it is also such a hard thing to do, and it is not something that I think I'm ever going to master, because we are going to go back to our whatever our default mode is, whether it be being too hard on ourselves. Sometimes we're too easy on ourselves on particular things. Sometimes we do need a bit of tough love in order to move things forward. But over the last 8 weeks, I spent some time being compassionately curious as to why I was feeling resistance around particular things. And I think as men, especially if you're kind of that type A personality where you're really that hard charger, you want to achieve everything, you want to keep going. And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with wanting more out of life. It is, there's one of my favorite episodes that I've done, and one of the most listened to episodes that we've done is one where I talk about it's okay to be content and still want more. Like, you can still be appreciative of everything you've got, and you can still be grateful for everything in your life, and you can still want to improve. There is nothing wrong with that. And I think we do sometimes, there's so many arguments with that you'll see, right? Be easier on yourself, be harder on yourself. but there's a whole bunch of gray area there too. Context is always going to be important. Like, what context are we talking about? Because for me, there's certain areas of my life where I probably need to take it a little bit easier on myself. But then there is other areas of my life where I probably need to be a little bit harder on myself. So it's no one or the other for everything and for everybody. And there's going to be times in your life where you need to take a step back. There's going to be times in your life where you need to take a step up. But I think arming yourself with that skill of compassionate curiosity around barriers that you are facing or resistance that you're coming up against can be a really powerful one to help you start to take action and move the things forward. So that's it for this week. I just wanted to do an episode, just let you know what is going on, where I've been, because I have just kind of disappeared and gone MIA for almost 2 months now. But this is the first episode where we're going to get back into it. And then from next week, you will see some interviews that I have done with some people, which I'm excited to share with you. And as always, I'm interested to know your feedback. Let me know what you like about the podcast. Let me know if you've got any guests that you would like to see on, even if it's yourself. If you're somebody who listens to this, who thinks that you're going to be able to provide some value to the people that listen to this, who are predominantly dads. There are some just parents, so mothers that listen to this as well too, but predominantly dads who want to get better, who've had some struggles in their life, they've either overcome or they're trying to overcome, but they just want to be able to push forward. They want to get better and they want to be their own brand of unstoppable. So if you think you can add some value to that audience, and you'd like exposure to that audience, reach out. You can find me on the Instagram, so at The Unstoppable Dad. You can also find us on the Facebook dad page, The Unstoppable Dad Project. And from the point of view of the podcast, you can find it on all the good podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google. Will be published every week on a Saturday Australian time. And then you will also be able to find the video versions of the podcast on our YouTube page. YouTube's something I'm going to be putting a little bit more time into. So jump on there, give us a subscribe, and share it around with your friends if you think they could see some value from what it is that I am doing here. Once again, thank you so much for your support. I'm excited to be back to this, and I'm excited to share with you what we've got in the future. Have a good week. See you next week. Goodbye.